Now, algae growth in rivers is a problem worldwide, affecting the water used by at least 2 billion people for food, work, and recreation. Our Land and Water Chief Scientist, Professor Richard McDowell, is the lead author of a paper just recently published in Nature's Scientific Reports. And it provides the first global analysis of freshwater quality, and he joins us now. Good evening, Richard.
Good evening, Sarah. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us from literally across town.
Yeah.
Rich, firstly, can you please set the context for our audience of why phosphorus is a bigger problem than nitrogen and the New Zealand situation compared to global waterways?
Sure. I guess the first thing we've got to recognise that algal growth is stimulated by both nitrogen and phosphorus. It's a bit like applying superphosphate or urea onto your pastures. They need both to grow, and the same occurs in rivers. But it's the amount of both of those that are meaningful in terms of algal growth. So we've done a study that's looked at 6,000 catchments around the world, and it's tallied up the quantity of both nitrogen and phosphorus and how much of those ratios come into waterways. And when you look at that, and you can see the relationship is stronger when it's controlled more by phosphorus. Now that's internationally, and as you outlined, there's 1.7 billion people who are affected by waterways that have algal growth stimulated by phosphorus, and another 280 million by nitrogen. Now, in New Zealand, obviously our waterways are reasonably cleaner than many overseas, but still, phosphorus plays an important role. And in our waterways, it's more common for phosphorus to limit, i.e. to control, I guess, algal growth than it is for nitrogen. But both have to be managed.
Okay, so under the Action for Healthy Waterways policy announcement that's come out, Richard, the particular N has been the biggest focus here. Are you saying that we're not putting enough attention on phosphorus use and runoff into our waterways?
Well, it was both what they said, dissolved inorganic nitrogen and dissolved reactive phosphorus were both included within the policy. They've been not shelved, but they've been taken out to be re-examined in another 12 months. But the focus in the meantime has been on the toxicity limit for nitrogen, which has been brought down to, I think, about 2.4 milligrams per litre. Now, that doesn't necessarily relate to the algal growth side of it, which is what they're going to be addressing in another 12 months.
Right, so we've got more to come in the space. I'd like to understand about mitigation, and it's either got to be at an output level or an input level. What do you believe the right tools are in managing our effect on our waterways?
Well, we've got a long history with output-focused policy, and I kind of have faith that works, especially when folk are reasonably adaptable and flexible and want to do the right thing. And I'm optimistic that that's the case here. Many cases overseas, though, it's input controls, and we've seen that kind of sneak in now. And the term I think the minister has used, and indeed it's in the cabinet paper, is the last chance saloon, and that's where that 190 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare in terms of synthetic N has come in. Is that going to work compared to output? The jury's out. Some folk think that is. I like to think that if you can measure and model what you're doing on your property, you can manage it well. Hence output focused.
Yeah, we had Mike Manning on from Ravensdown on Sarah's Country last night, Rich, and of course the fertiliser industry is most upset around the lack of consultation around these inputs. We've seen a huge growth in the use of nitrogen on our farms since the early 1990s. Do you, in all of your studies and seeing ways that we can drop this amount of usage, some profitable farms in your research?
Yeah, So obviously, Mike might have mentioned the work that's been going on at Lincoln here in terms of the University Dairy Farm. Obviously, a very profitable operation that uses less than that 190. But there are, that's just one case in Canterbury, albeit a leading light, and can be used by many others in the region. There are lots of other, I guess, adaptations and/or mitigations that enable us to get down to levels of losses that mean that they are within the current policy. And the way to do that is probably better with the farm plans, and that's been quite an encouraging piece of policy that has been announced. I say encouraging because it was first proffered by the primary sectors themselves.
And not every regional council has progressed with the strict and sort of introduction of farm environment plans, and Canterbury, I know, has been one of the forefathers of that. Do you believe that our regional councils are set up to create the individualised understanding of the uniqueness of those, not only those catchments, but the climates of those different regions, to be able to make sure that farming continues and not just a blanket national standards approach?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the first step in this is to signal that it's needed. You need farm plans in order to make progress. Then you need some standardisation of those plans to ensure that they're robust. They're not off the back of an envelope. We like to work in a quantitative world, so they need to be measurable. They need to relate to maps, and they need therefore to be audible, to show that the actions that you're taking on your property are leading to the right outcomes, for example, in water. Now there's a big caveat here, and that's around capacity, though. And the intent here is to have everyone across the country, irrespective of which council they're in, have a farm environment plan that's up to scratch. Now, of course, with there being 40,000 farms, there's going to be quite a few to do amongst the 200 people who are currently qualified. But that's a market opportunity, an opportunity I think our primary sectors are gearing up to fill.
Yes, and I know that Beef and Lamb have set some ambitious targets, and 2021 is not very far away, Rich. We've just been speaking to Kerry Worsnop on the topic of carbon sequestration through the government's obsession with forestry. You have come out saying that water quality needs to work in with the Zero Carbon Act. Otherwise, it is, of course, agnostic in its approach. But could you explain around why the planting of trees has an effect on water quality?
Yeah, so I mean, this is one thing that not only I, but many of the farmers I deal with want is certainty. And if you've got two pieces of advice, one coming at you for to reducing your carbon footprint, another one wanting to look at reducing your water quality footprint, and if they have mitigations that are somewhat antagonistic, i.e. go against one another, you end up not having either of those outcomes achieved. Now, forestry, if you put it in the wrong place, can end up doing that. For example, it can dry up a stream and therefore concentrate some of those contaminants. So that's why we see a great opportunity here to not only integrate the mitigations that we use for water quality, but also with greenhouse gases and potentially other things as well, like biodiversity, or even radically profit.
Oh dear, no, not that. Of course, having market driving incentive to do good would be terrible, Rich. But
I think it would be absolutely fantastic.
Hey, thank you so much for everything that you do in your role as Chief Scientist at Our Land and Water, which of course I know you wear an ag research hat and have done for many, many years. To close the show, I would like to talk about your favourite band. I know you were just telling me in the break that you've been a Dunedinite for many years. It's a good music scene. Any recommendations on New Zealand music that you'll be listening to support these
Well,
local artists?
I'm an old fan of Martin Phillips and the Chills, but my most recent Dunedin band that I've come across and like immensely are Soaked Oats, a group of lads from I think from the north side of Dunedin, students, and producing some quite nice tunes.
Wonderful. Well, we're having a bit of soaked oats as the winter gets a bit colder and you get the porridge out. Right. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Serious Country. That's Professor Richard McDowell there from Our Land and Water.
This is Serious Country.